Perhaps the most flexible and extensible technique for working with package configurations is to store your package configs inside of a SQL Server table. So what we're going to do, we're going to break this into a couple of videos. I'm going to show you in this video just the basics, how it works, what it's used for, how to set it up, because it's actually pretty easy to get going. But then, if that's not enough, come back and watch the next video, and we're going to talk about some best practices for using the package configuration tables. So we need a package here. So let's build us a new SSIS project. And really, this set of videos is more about configuration than what the package is doing. So I'm keeping it rather light. So we'll just do a script task, a variable called my variable. Let's make it a string, and let's just set the value set in variables window, and same thing before. Let's do C# this time. Done this. In case you haven't watched the previous videos, we've done this several times, just even in this section. So we'll do a little pop-up box now. This should be old hat to you by now. You should know exactly what I'm doing, how it works, why I'm doing it this way. If you don't, go back and watch some of the earlier videos in this chapter. And oops, apparently I missed something. My variable. Probably missed a paren. Missed a semicolon. C#. And nothing here. Hey, it just says set in variables window. Fancy, fancy, I know. So let's bring this back down here so we can get that warm fuzzy feeling of good green. And now I want to show you how to do the package configs for SQL Server. So I enable my configurations, I add, and this time I want to choose SQL Server. And this part of the screen is fairly easy to understand. We choose a connection. So there are no connections stored in here. I'm going to make a new connection to the local host, and I'll put this in the learnitfirst.com database. And what's going to happen here is that it places this connection down in the connection managers of this package. Okay, good to know, handy to remember for later. Now, which table will store your configuration information? Well, when I click this little drop down, SSIS is running a query against the tables in this database to see if any of them will store or are eligible to store package configuration information. You see, all we have to do is click the new button, and it will prompt us with a nice little script that we could run that would create our SSIS configurations inside of SQL Server. So really, I can just say OK. That's all I got to do right here. Say OK. Now, and believe me, in the next video when we talk about best practices, I'm going to maybe make some changes to that and show you what all it does and how you can help yourself. But for now, it's OK to just say no, just say new and then OK. Now, so let's see how to describe this. So I'll do it this way. So one SQL Server SSIS configurations table can be used for many packages. You can/will name each group of configurations and refer to them later by that name. Okay? This is called a filter. Okay? So I should have just kept that there. This is called a configuration filter. Okay, I'm about to wipe this away, so pause the video if you want to reread or copy that down. Okay, so here's my configuration filter. I need to give it a name. Ideally in SSIS, we really want to be reusable. We want to make this extensible. We don't want to have to find ourselves in a position that we're redefining the same variable names and same package configurations in different filters. So we would want to make this at a high level. And this requires some planning sometimes. Right now, I'm just going to give it a name like configuration would be like variable names. And so by naming it variable names, then I'm kind of implying what sort of configurations this particular grouping will store. Variable names, actually, variable values. That's because that's what we're going to change. We're not going to change the names. Oops, sorry. We're not going to change the names. We're going to change the values. So I say next, and now we're in that similar screen that we were in with the XML configurations, where we can choose multiple properties. And I would go to each of my variables, and I would say that I'm able to change the value of that given variable. So for this one, we have my variable, and we want to change the value property. And happens to be the only one that we have. This configuration name has nothing to do with SQL Server. That's purely in this package. So I say close, and I want to show you what's happened behind the scenes. So let's go ahead and go into the learnitfirst.com database. And in there, take a look at the new table that has been created. You can see SSIS configurations being listed here. And I noticed something straight off the bat that I just hate, and that's a space in the table name. Because now I can't just say, hey, select all from SSIS configurations. I have to put those little brackets around it. Fine. It's just kind of a pain, it's just not awesome. And just take a look. Because we only selected one single property, then it only added a single row. The configuration filter, the grouping that we placed this in, is called variable values. The value that will be placed into this particular variable's value, you see, we said this is the variable and this is the property. So when this gets used, the value of the my variable will be populated with set in variables window, and it's a string data type. Cool. Okay, well, let's go run this now. And let's see if it was set in variables window. Oh, you know what? Set in variables window was what it said here. That's because it took the default. So here's what you do. Update dvo.ssis configurations. Set configured value equal set in SQL Server. Now here's the tricky part. You have to now identify the configuration filter and the package path. So just copy and paste. And package path equal, because you can't just do one or the other. You have to do both of these. So a package path, this particular variable could have its value property set in other configuration filters. Or this configuration filter might have many different values for other variables. So you have to do both the configuration filter and the package path. And in the next video, I'm going to make this a little simpler. I say OK. Now you can see it says set in SQL Server. And when we run our package, it reads from SQL Server to find out what that configuration value is. Very cool, huh? All right, so I'm going to cut this one short because I want to come back and talk about a few best practices in the next video for storing and managing your SSIS package configurations in your SQL servers.